Hey, blessings everyone today. The topic that I want to address is how do I stop having gay sex? Because I get it a lot. I get that question a lot. How do I just stop? I want to stop doing this stuff. Well, it's easy to say just stop because it's kind of what I did. In 1999, I left the gay lifestyle, meaning I stopped having gay sex. But I left in other ways. I left that whole scene. And I got shocked out of it, you could say. Things had just gotten so sadistic and perverse and ugly that I didn't want to do it anymore. I couldn't articulate it that way. I couldn't express it in any way. I just instinctively knew that things had gotten black and white. It was now a matter of life and death, and I just had to make a choice. Did I want to live, or did I just want to stay in that? And I did. I wanted to get out, and I did. And 16 years later, I haven't had sex with men or women. Now, how can you go about this? Because not everybody's going to go through a sort of a crisis like I did. What you need to do to stop having gay sex is you need to look here. You can't just say, well, I'm going to stop the actions, because the desire is still going to be here. It's still going to be here, that desire to do it. And eventually it's going to overwhelm you, and you're going to fall. And you're just going to get back into that whole scene, and you're going to feel awful about it afterwards, because it's not something you want to do. And it's just going to be difficult. But when you want to just stop for good, again, we need to work with our whole self, our mind, body, and our spirit and our soul. In order to stop having gay sex, you need to go to, like I said, you need to go to the desire. Now, I'll argue that the desire goes back to childhood, because, if we look back on our life, that's when we first started having same-sex attractions. We said to ourselves, gee, I'm attracted to whoever, that boy or that guy on TV or whoever. You need to discover why. Now, and the studies have been done here. Most gay men had bad relationships, either with their father or other male figures in their lives. Now, you always have a number of gay men who will say, that's not true. I had a great relationship with my father. Nothing traumatic happened. I wasn't molested. I wasn't raped. I wasn't beaten. None of those things happened. And I'm not doubting them. I'm taking them at their word, because not everybody fits into these parameters. The majority do. But the brain is complicated, and all of our lives are complicated, and different things happen to all of us. There's no one size fits one person. There's certain, and I discovered this in the gay life when I would talk to my friends, that how remarkably similar a lot of our lives came down. And that's why there's a lot of camaraderie there, and it's hard to leave that life, because especially when you come through a traumatic boyhood for boys of being teased or left out or bullied, and when you get into a community where a lot of guys experience the same thing, it feels good. It's like, hey, I'm not alone, because you grew up feeling alone. Now, that inner boy that we all have, that was hurt and devastated, he needs to be healed in order for you to stop having gay sex. Boy, how do you do that? That sounds crazy. That sounds like a huge thing. It really, really isn't. Part of the realization is just starting out and feeling and realizing that you've been hurt. That's hard to do. But once you do that, things just progress, I think, quite easily and nicely. I had to go back and just admit to myself that as a kid, and it's not a great thing to admit, even just to yourself, because as men, we want to be confident and we want to be self-assured, and we don't want to feel like we've been victims or we've been, put upon. But, as a kid, I was a sad, lonely little boy. And for whatever reason, that happened. And as I got into my teens, I felt that I wasn't being affirmed by other boys. I felt rejected by that. And I set them up, and I set masculinity and maleness up as an idol, as something other than me, something that I lacked, something that I desperately wanted, and something that I needed, and I idolized it. Now, when I got into the gay scene, especially when you're young, you don't have to be particularly great looking. I wasn't. But you'll find a lot of men who desire you and want you, and gee, that feels really great at the time, because here you've gone through your whole life of just feeling very beaten upon and unloved and sort of hated, and now suddenly you have men that want to be with you and affirm you, compliment you, and all this stuff, and it works for a while, and then the sex becomes routine and you don't feel as fulfilled, and stuff gets more complicated, and sex becomes more hardcore. I mean, there was stuff, and we can all relate to this, there was stuff as an 18-year-old that I certainly wouldn't do that I was doing when I was 28. That just comes about with experience, but it just comes about because you're willing to take more risks, because subconsciously you're figuring out that this whole gay thing really isn't working, and you need to do more. By the time I got out when I was 29 years old, there's really nothing more I could have done. I had done everything you could think of sexually. It just had been done, and I still felt empty and I felt unfulfilled, and that's where I washed out. And when I had that crisis, and I left. Now back to that hurt boy that we all have. How do you actually heal him? And then, because he is healed, he's not wanting, that boy inside you is not needing another man to be with, to make him feel comforted and to feel safe. It can happen in a lot of different ways. I have had help with psychological problems, and that has worked. I've also done a lot of self-healing with meditation and prayer, and one of these, and I'll share with you, I imagined my psyche, and I think a lot of us are that way. It's just a crowded room with all these personas and all these personalities we've built, that lost little boy of my childhood, and the teen who got into gay and thought it was all going to be, great. And then that guy in his 20s who lost friends to AIDS and was sad and still trying to make it work. And then that guy in his late 20s who was getting angry and just pissed at everybody. Christ, I invited into that room. And also his foster father, St. Joseph, who was a partner in meditation with me a lot of times, and I invited them into that room, and they just really, pushed aside all these personalities and all these fake masks I had created, and they went to that whimpering little boy in the corner, and they embraced him, and they just healed him. It sounds simple, and it sounds kind of stupid. But when you do that sort of meditation and prayer, it does slowly work, and it heals, and it's a rather easy thing to do. But I think a lot of solutions to the problems of life are rather easy and simple, and it just works. And then suddenly the desire for gay sex goes away. It doesn't go overnight. I do not have a desire to be with a man sexually anymore. It's because that little boy, isn't so sad and feeling, devastated that the other little boys didn't like him. and that he wasn't picked on the team, and he got bullied and he got called a fag, and and he felt outside and lonely. That little boy is gone. You know, he's always still sort of a part of me, but that crushed kid is gone. The boy that's been healed is with me. And along with him, because the same-sex desires originated with him. If we're honest with ourselves, it originated when we were younger. There's a few men that are older and they suddenly think I'm gay. That's a whole other story. But for most of us, it began when we were younger. And when that boy is healed, those feelings again also will be healed. And it's quite liberating, and you finally get the peace that you were always looking for in sex, that always eluded you. And I'll continue to pray for all of you, and be assured of that. And I love you all, and just don't lose hope. Just keep trying, and be assured of God's love for you, and He does love you. Bless you all.